So in this video, I'm going to talk about a question asked on the community, which is how to click on a button. So why would you want to do that? So let's say you have a custom view component. You want, after whatever you do in this custom view component, for example, you're setting some data or something else, you have a record editor, so you create something special that you set inside the record editor, and then you have a button, an action button, that is, for example, calling a process. And this process is using as input parameters the information from your record editor. So what you want to do is, let's say you have a view component, you want the user, you want the treatment, you want the code in your view component to do whatever it needs to do, send the data to the record editor, and click on the button, actionate something. So we don't have a method for that right now. We have an Rx action method, so to call a specific JavaScript action that I showed in another video. But we don't have a click button, like our execute action button. So a question in the community was, how could I do that? So I'm going to show you what you could do. So here I have a view, a custom view component, and I have 3 buttons. One is visible, another one is hidden, another one is disabled, and my custom view component is accepting 2 things. A button label, so it's just a string, and a GUID. So this GUID, what it is if you look at the JSON property and you are looking for your button label, you should be not invisible. Yeah. Okay, so you should be able to look an Rx action button. So here you can find the label of the button and you can find its GUID. So 73 something. So here I just copy paste the GUID. So this I have 3 examples. So here the goal is I want to click on this button. I have something here in this view component that I want to click on this button. So I have 3 view components, and each time I give the label from the button and its GUID. So here is my example. So I have 2 buttons in my view component. One is when I click on this one, I'm going inside to look inside the page for a button which label is not invisible, and I'm going to try to click on this button and execute its contents. So in each button I have an action, so it doesn't really matter what it is. Here it's just a BMC Rx alert, so which is, I want to just to display a message, whatever, it doesn't matter. I have to prove that I clicked on the button. That's the point. If I click here, I have a message, my name is nobody. Here the button is invisible, and here it's disabled, so I cannot do anything. So here I can look by label or GUID. So when I click on it, you can see that the code from this button is executed. So I was able to find it. I'm looking by GUID, I can find it as well. For the button that is not visible, hidden, you see that nothing happens. The reason why is the button does not exist in the DOM. It's not here, it doesn't exist. So it will not do anything. So you cannot have a hidden button and click on it. It's not going to work. But now, in the case of the button disabled, so I cannot click it directly, but if I'm using this code, I can actually execute these actions, even if it's disabled. So I don't know if it's normal or not, that's another question, but basically you could use that, for example, to have a button that does nothing, but only be called by your code. But that's another problem. So how is it working on the UI side? So I created a view component click button that has 2 input parameters, button label, button GUID, and inside the directive I have simply 2 buttons that you saw earlier, trigger by label, trigger by GUID. This is my view component. inside the directive, how it's working. So I have two buttons. One of them is going to try to click on the button, searching it in the page by its label, another one by the GUID. So I'm going to try by the GUID. Here you have the, depending on the type, if it's GUID or if it's a label. So the type is here. I'm going to click button. The first button is going to trigger by label, and by GUID, I'm calling click button with GUID. So I have a $scope.click button with type. So by GUID, what I'm using is I'm creating a signature. So if you are looking in the page, so let me show you here. So if you're looking at the button, you can see that we have a button is actually an Rx action button. And inside of it, you have a button. So what you do is inside your JavaScript code, you are looking for an Rx action button which has a view component ID, which is a GUID. So here, Rx view component ID, which is a GUID of the button. And then you say, well, inside of this stuff, I want to get the button object. So I find this one, and I look for the first button inside of it. So that's how you find a button. Once I got the button, this is just a string, I want to find it. I want to find this button. So you're using AngularJS $document. So basically you're looking inside the complete page and you say AngularJS, give me the element that match this string, this CSS string. And it's going to return to you a button if you find it. So if you found a button, you just say, well, I have an element object, just apply the click method, and so it should click it. Now, if you want to search by label, it is a bit wild because I don't think it would be a good idea, because the label is inside a span element. And the reason why I don't really like it is because what you do is that you are asking jQuery, in this case, to just look at the button label, which is just span, look for a span that contains the button label. So it might be way slower to find it. And the other reason why you might not want to do that is you can localize your application. So here, for example, let's say you have a button save ticket. That is in English. But then in French, you localize your application in French, which is sauver mon ticket. In this case, if you look by label, it's not going to work, because if you are in French and it's looking for the English string, it's not going to find it. Unless in your code, you say, oh, here is a list of localized string, or you do something way more complex. So it's a bit up to you. It might be more user-friendly because you just have to put the text of the button rather than GUID, because the GUID, you need to go inside the JSON, you need to find the Rx action button with the right label, copy-paste the GUID. So I understand that it might be more user-friendly to use a label, but performance-wise, and even if you change the label later or someone else decide to customize your application and change the label, well, the code will break. So it's a bit up to you, but basically the idea is that in one case, you look for the view component ID and you get the button inside, and you're using $document for that. The other one is you are using jQuery to get the button label. Anyway, at the end of the day, you get a button element and you click on the button element.